But yeah, for Alison's questions, mutual would be good to understand what you mean by mutual due diligence and what tool you use. Yeah. So one of the main issues that we've identified when we did this self-analysis and when we spoke with a lot of local and national actors is the repetition of due diligences requirements from several NGOs. If I take an NGO based in Bangladesh, for example, that might work with several international NGOs, such as Terre des Hommes, IRC, Action Against Hunger, or whatever, maybe 4 or 5 of them. And then there might be an emergency, and 5 of these international NGOs will work with these local partners, which means that every time the local partner has to do this mutual diligence document that could take 3 or 5 days, 3 days, 2 days, 1 day of work to do. And it's really a top-down approach where we ask questions only one-sided, sub-awarding, and like really a top-down approach where we're gonna require things only from their end. And there's no mutual service here where nobody's analyzing the strength of each other. This is just the international NGO ensuring that its partner ticks all the boxes. And it's not a two-way street where both are actually partnering. There's really a feeling of top-down, which needs to end. And the mutual due diligence is a tool that will allow partners to create something that's a lot more two-way street, where we can identify, we can make sure that we are a good partner as an international NGO with a local NGO, but the other way is true as well. And so it's really something that needs to be addressed with a mutual due diligence tool. We all know the due diligence tool that has like a set of questions about governance, about logistics, about finance, about communications, etc. Well, in that case, we'll come up with a tool where both actors will answer the question, and we'll also come up with something where we can identify where the weaknesses of each of them are and what we can do about them. So this is a tool that we haven't set up yet. We are working on it at the moment, and we will set it up in the coming months to use with our partners and test in the 5 pilot countries. And it's a tool that we want to do as well in collaboration with other actors, other international actors, and commit to making tools that are streamlined across the sector to avoid for local and national actors to repeat all the time this use of these mutual due diligence requirements. Will you share the toolkits and tools that you have developed? Yes, we can share the toolkits and tools that we have developed once they are validated and once they're operational. At the moment, the policy was the first step before making the tools. We needed to define our strategic orientation to then use the tools. So we're in the process with several people at HQ and our local and national partners to design these tools. Realistically, they will be done by the months of October, November, and then they will start being tested in the countries of intervention. So this is how we're going to do it. So at the moment, we're happy to share the tools, but it won't be before the end of the year or next year, in consideration with the project evolution and yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to take a question maybe. Can you explain a bit more about your objectives, indicators, and aims with local private sector partners? Yes, so this is one sort of a micro area for Terre des Hommes. It was one of the trickiest ones to define because it's not, when we talk about local private sector partners here, we're excluding what we call suppliers at local level. So we really want to work with actors that have a piece of the project that we want to implement that's not just providing supplies for us to lead this project, but really operational, have concrete operations on a project and be responsible for a piece of the project. We do work with private sector partners that are rather big at the moment, and it's just a small percentage of our partners globally. But we do need to have better defined tools and a better defined orientation about it. And this is something that you will be able to see in the policy. And so we don't have specific indicators related to the private sector partners. They go within global indicators that we have with partners, but we do have objectives to increase the way we partner with the private sector on a case-by-case basis, and depending on the countries as well. Not all the contexts that we work in allow this to be possible, and in certain sectors it makes a lot of sense to evolve towards partnerships that are more of a win-win, and that's less top-down as well. There will still be how do you say orientations that practicalities on the financial side that we must make sure are fair to us and to our private sector partners. But what is sure is that we want to increase the way it is, that change a bit the way it is perceived, increase the number of them that make sense in project delivery, and not only as suppliers. But I guess another question is the one with governmental institution. That's also something that we have as a category, as opposed to national NGOs and local CSOs. We did have in our analysis and in the partners that we have at Terre des Hommes a lot of governmental institution. We did analyze that, and it varies. It changes a lot to work with a ministry somewhere in Burkina Faso or in Budapest, for example. So these are quite different structures. What is sure is that we cannot have the same ways of working, the same tools, the same expectations as with a national NGO or local CSO or with an international NGOs. That's why we really needed different tools. And what I mean by tools is contractual tools, strategic tools in the partnership that we want to have with them. And also just guidance notes for our teams on the field to operate with certain ministries, because it's much longer term, it's a lot more official, it's different practices that we want to have, and it is very complex and challenging. Again, this policy in its entirety has to adapt to the context that we operate in. Localization is much more possible in certain countries. It's possible everywhere, but it's more possible in certain countries in a sense than others, depending on the context. There's very complicated ones in which the operationalization of localization is extremely complex, and we have to accept the adaptability that we must have when it comes to complex context. The localization will not be possible in the same way currently in Gaza as it is in Albania, for example. And this is really a case-by-case thing that we want to have. We want to make progress, but we're subject to changes in all of these contexts. And we can therefore put more of an emphasis in certain countries. I'm thinking of Albania now for governmental institution, or perhaps Moldova more than in others. So we don't have a streamlined approach to all of the, we have new tools that we're preparing, and we have a global guidance, but we have to adapt to the context to context changes. And this is something that, we'll analyze in the coming years in the policy to see. This is a test as well. This is something new to us, and we want to see how it goes and what's possible and what's not possible. What's important to understand here also is that the next 4 years are also a test phase for Terre des Hommes to see if its localization policy is working. The overhead costs. Sorry, I'm reading more of the questions. I'll take this one and perhaps one more, and then we'll have to hand over to I will answer quickly, and then I'll hand over to Enike. The overhead cost is a huge issue, and it's perhaps one of the key ones for localization policy. So we did develop an overhead policy. That's one for Terre des Hommes, which is called the Golden Rule. And we are going to test this rule that we have. It will be part of the localization policy when I share it. But essentially, there is a retribution of the overhead cost that Terre des Hommes has to its local partners in a way. I will not go into the percentage and all the details right now, but there is a developed piece related to that in the policy. Again, this will have to remain different from context to context for the reasons I explained before. So there is a general rule that we leave some flexibility for countries to do, because we're also subject to pressures from our donors, and we can only do efforts on the rules that our donors. We can only work with the donors that we have, make some efforts that on our end, but sometimes we're subject to pressures and country contexts that don't allow us to actually do it. So there will be some flexibility around it. We have a general rule that we want to abide to as much as possible. It will not be possible in all of the contexts and the countries, and we know this. It also depends on the donors that we have. So for now, we leave this flexibility. This will be tested in the next few years, and we'll see how we do. Yeah, and then maybe I'll take the last one, and then I'll hand it over to you, to Enike. Yeah, so donors were not included here. Perhaps, yeah, that's a good point. But donors were not included here because although we consider them, they're definitely our partners and they're part of the activities that we have. This policy is really about the operations at country level and the operations that we give at local and national level. We do have another team that that develops similar strategic orientations with major donors such as USAID, the European Union, etc. And we do consider and UN agencies as well. We chose not to put them into here because although they have a role to play in partnership and localization, at our level, it made more sense to consider governmental institutions, national NGOs, some international NGOs that we partner with, especially for consortium, for example, or private sector partners. But yeah, just in a word, maybe the main strengths of our local partners are definitely their closeness to the field, their understanding of the field, their ability to respond very quickly to emergencies, for example, and their ability technically to operate in certain sectors that Terre des Hommes doesn't know how. Just to answer to Anna Schmidt's question very quickly. Anyway, I'm going to have to wrap up here and hand over to Enike. So thank you very much for listening to me, and I'm happy to answer more questions in the chat directly in a bit. Over to you, Enike.